All right. So I had to do this video over because my last video fucked up at the very end because my laptop was dying. Fuck. It pissed me off. That was an hour-long video. And it's basically this. So excuse me. So basically again, today I'm talking about communication. So, like I said, if I haven't said it, I'm gonna say it now. Communication is the bread and butter to any successful relationship. If you want a successful relationship with somebody, you need to communicate. You need to be willing to open your damn mouth and say words, right? You can't sit over here and think that you can just be a goddamn mute, and think that things are going to work out. You can't be a fucking Chewbacca. You can't be a fucking R2D2. You can't be these things or people where you don't say shit or anything you do say isn't understandable. So it's like in this situation, you have to be somebody who can articulate and also listen. You need to be able to do both. You cannot be just a great listener. You need to also know how to fucking respond. At some point, you're going to have to open your goddamn mouth, and the last thing anyone wants to hear out somebody's mouth is them talking out the side of their damn neck. So you need to be mindful about what you're saying too. This is why you need to know how to articulate. So I'm not about to sit over here and tell you every word in the goddamn thesaurus or dictionary that's appropriate to say on now. We're not about to do that bullshit here. You can figure that shit out. But what I am going to tell you is key things that I can promise to everything will help you have better communication skills with the people that you fuck with. In this case, your man or your girl. Number one, the HURR process. I don't think you're supposed to pronounce it. It's an acronym, but it's faster to say HURR than say HURER, right? But this process is a 5-step, listening process. Again, you're probably like, Elijah, this is the topic says communication. So why are we talking about listening? Because 70% of the process is listening. When you are communicating, especially in relationships, and somebody's hurt, or whatever the case may be, the biggest step, the biggest part of that process is listening. You need to listen more than you speak. Shut the fuck up, put the bong down, and listen to what the fuck this person got to say. Simple as that. You got to listen more than you speak. You cannot talk so much, right? 30% of the process is talking. 70% of it is listening. So what does the HURR stand for? It stands for hearing, understanding, remembering, evaluating, and responding. So the first step is the easiest process. Everybody knows how to fucking do it. You do it in your sleep. Maybe. I think your senses are still active when you're asleep. I'm not 100% on that. I'm not no expert in biology, but you do it when you awake. I do know that. As long as your ears work, you are utilizing your senses actively and passively. They're both. Your senses are neither active nor passive. They're both. So I just said that backwards, but you get what the fuck I'm saying. So hearing, I heard my voice. You hear this video. I hear shit plopping in the toilet, when someone's taking a shit, like you're hearing everything, whether you choose to or you don't. You know how people be like, you be in an argument and they say, I'm toning you out. I'm not about to hear what the fuck you got to say, blah, 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 blah. But they sitting right there like 2 feet away from you and you still decide to keep talking. Well, unless you just a dumbass, they obviously can still hear you. Unless they put earplugs in and they start playing loud music in their ear, they can still hear you. So, you know what that means? You can't just turn off hearing. It's not like a light switch. So Everybody is capable of hearing within reason. We know that there's people who can't hear, but I'm talking about people who can. You obviously can hear what your partner's saying, right? So I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna have to explain to you about fucking hearing. So we're gonna go to the next step. Understanding. That's the next process. So after you hear what somebody says, so if I tell you the sky's blue, you heard that, right? So now you're trying to understand it. Again, this is a simpler statement. Things get a lot more complex and profound when you're dealing with people in a relationship, or y'all trying to be in a relationship. Things get more complex because y'all talking about things that actually fucking have some depth to it, not no damn sky's blue or not, right? So, but for the simplicity of this situation, I told you the sky's blue. You heard it, right? Now you finished first step one. Step two is you are trying to understand that. So you're understanding that I said sky's blue. So whatever, this is the process of this is part of the process where you gather any questions that you need to have, and you get clarification as this person is speaking. So this is when you try to clarify. And this is where interjecting tactfully is appropriate. I can't say that word to save my life, but tactfully, you are interjecting as they're speaking if they're still continuing to talk, so that you can get clarifying information on what they've been saying so far, so you can stay on the same page as them, so you can understand what they're trying to tell you. Because this is where a lot of people fuck up at. They hear what someone says and then they're just quick to respond. They skip the whole process of understanding them and all this other stuff. And this is how you get from being somebody that you think you know what they were saying and you didn't. This is where a lot of misunderstandings happens in relationships. This is where a lot of misunderstandings happens in people who are dating, because one person says this, the other person just doesn't try to, they don't put no effort into trying to understand. They just let their interpretation take its course. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Everybody's interpretation is going to be different when you say something to them. I can tell you the sky's blue, and this is what happens. Like, I'm about to give you a good visual on this. You ever see like a rapper rap? No, that's a bad example. But for some people, you ever seen, okay, a better example. Vents. So vent in houses and stuff like that. What do they usually have? They have a filter. Why do they have a filter? Your car has an air filter. Why do we have air filters? It's to filter out bullshit, right? So, and bring in clean air. So when so in the same scenario, right? Imagine a filter, but imagine like hundreds of them. And instead of air going through these filters, imagine words going through it. Imagine like tonality going through those filters, expression, body language, and it's going through all these filters, and then it reaches you. Those filters, whether you have 100 of them that you're imagining or 50, all of those filters are a representation of your life perception. This is how you perceive the world. This may be how, you may have a filter of how you grew up, a filter of your childhood, a filter of the bad things you went through in life. You have all these filters. And so when people speak to you, it goes through these filters. Not all filters are applied for every conversation, but a good amount of them are. And this affects how you took in a statement that someone may make. So when I tell you the sky is blue, it will go through your filters, and you could come out being like, oh, Elijah, why would you say the sky's red? See what I mean? And in my head, I'm going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because I clearly said blue, not red. But because of how you interpreted it based on your filtering of how you see the world, you took it in as me saying that the sky was red. Again, this is very simple, but I'm telling you, it's a lot more complex in a different situation. So it's kind of like, I think, to give an actual realistic situation, because I don't want people to be confused here. If you dating somebody, let's say you're in a relationship, and y'all having a serious conversation, and the person says like, let's say the guy speaking to the woman, and he's telling her like, I didn't decide to do that because I didn't think it was necessary, right? So let's say the girl was like, "Why did you not call me?" Right? After this situation happened, or after my friend passed away, or and I was, you didn't think that I was going through something or something, like you didn't want to check in and see if I was okay. Not everybody's perfect, first of all, but so let's say in his head he thought giving space made more sense. So in his head he responds and says, "Well, I didn't do it because I just didn't think that was appropriate or necessary. Because you was going through something, I just didn't think that it was wise for me to call." Let's say he said something like that. Some of y'all have filters where when you hear that, your interpretation of it is he's saying that he didn't care to call you. Oh, see, you didn't care. Like, that's what you mean? You see what I mean? That's your interpretation of what he said. What you should do when a guy says something like that, or anytime statements are made like that and you get this interpretation that they not caring or something like that, what you should be doing is trying to understand. So see, the listening process, the hearing process is supposed to combat fuck shit like this. It's supposed to keep you rational when you're having a conversation. So yeah, I may have my own interpretation of the world and I may take in what you say as you saying that you don't care. But because I'm practicing the hearing process, well, it says I need to make sure I'm understanding what this person said. I took it in as they said that they don't care about me. So that's why they didn't call. But in reality, I need to understand what they're saying. So, okay, let me gather some clarifying questions and ask this person for clarification of what they really mean. Hey, so if I was the girl and he said it, I'll be like, "Hey, what did you mean by that?" And he's like, or if I was to, as the woman, you could be like, "Hey, I'm getting this. I got the impression that you meant that you just didn't care to call. Is that what you meant?" And he could be like, nah, I do care. It's just that I just didn't think that was something to do. You see what I mean? That's the process of understanding what somebody's saying. You should always be doing that because a lot of us, people do this all the fucking time, especially when your emotions get caught up in a situation or something like that. We quick to skip that understanding process and just take in for whatever we're take in whatever we're hearing for what it is that we interpret it as. And so we're interpreting things in the wrong way. So guess what happens? Y'all misunderstand each other. He on one page, you on another page. So you have to always, or at least try to always practice understanding what you heard. Get clarifying questions. Ask those questions so you can make sure y'all stay on the same page. Simple as that. Next. 12 minutes in. I'm trying to keep this shorter than an hour because the last one was an hour anyway. Remembering. This is easy shit. You're just remembering what you got clarification on. That's it. You just, whether you take notes or you keep it mentally noted, that's all you're doing. Evaluating. This is you evaluating what the fuck the person said. So you got understanding from it. You know what the fuck they said. And now you are evaluating what they said. This is the second to last step to responding. This is when you know what they were saying, you know what they meant by it, and now you are evaluating that to give which is the last step, a response. That's how you listen. So anytime I hear somebody tell me they hear me, I question, did you actually listen to me? You know what I'm saying? Because listening is a lot more steps. Listening is a lot more rigorous and it requires a lot more work. It's easy to just hear somebody. So, because again, that's passive. So anyways, that's the Herbert process. If you was to just use this, you would do a lot better when it comes to communicating with your partner or somebody you're dating or whatever case may be. Again, this could be applied to anything, but in focus of dating relationships, this is really important. If you try and have a long-term situation with somebody, you need to be able to listen very well. Like I said, 70% of the process is listening, 30% is talking. You're not going to always be perfect at it. I'm not always perfect at it. You're going to fuck up. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Fuck up, cry about it, move on, and do better. Don't be sorry, be better. That's what they say. So that's the Herbert process. Next, Now, the next few things are just points of suggestions, is things that I think are still important when it comes to communication, especially with somebody you trying to spend your life with. If you looking for a life partnership, long-term relationship, marriage, you need to be able to do almost all these things that I'm listing out. You should be able to do this shit in your goddamn sleep. You should be able to fucking do this shit upside down while you eating a bowl of cereal. You should be able to do this shit while you playing putt-putt. I don't give a fuck what you doing. You should be able to do this shit. You know, the way you blink, naturally, you better be blinking like this. You better listen as well as you blink. That's how I'm put it. That's how I try to tell myself. Listen as well as you blink. So, the next thing, listening to respond. This is more of a suggestion of what you shouldn't do in during an interaction with a partner, especially when they're coming to you with a gripe that they have with you or something you did that they didn't appreciate. This is something you don't fucking do. You don't sit over here and you listen to respond. This is actually the exact opposite. Now that I think about it, this is the exact opposite of the Herbert process, because what you're doing is you are still hearing the person and you are responding, which is part of that process, the Herbert process. But what you're not doing is understanding, remembering, evaluating. So you're just listening to respond. You're hearing what they're saying. You just quick the response. A good example is I say 3 sentences. Like as I'm speaking, I get like I'm getting a third way through my sentence, and all of a sudden the person cuts me off and like, you know, because they hear something that triggers them, so they just jump out their seat and lose their mind and acting like they goddamn a fish out of water or some shit. You gotta have self-control, you know. It like things that you're gonna hear. Sometimes you're gonna hear things that may trigger you or probably bother you when somebody says something, but you have to practice patience and say, okay, let me hear everything that they're saying first, understand why they said it, remember why they said, evaluate it, and then give a response. So you got to be patient when people are speaking. When you just jump out your seat like that, you know, like you at a spelling bee or some shit, you make the person think that you didn't hear a damn thing that they said, and they're not going to feel valued. They're not going to feel like you care about what they have to say. You know what I'm saying? You have to show that you respect another person's feelings. This is part of that respect. You got to be able to listen. So listening to respond, that's a big no-no. That is a no-no. Don't fucking do that shit. If you make a mistake doing it like I have, just perform corrective actions. You know, like nothing is perfect. Just perform corrective actions. Corrective actions is, my bad, can you finish what you saying? That's corrective actions. Simple shit. Not the last thing. Next thing, how you say something. This is also a, you know, critical component to the DNA structure of a successful relationship. You have to be mindful of how you say things. Your tonality is just as crucial as what you're saying, right? It's just as crucial as you listening. When you finally are at that last step at responding, you need to be mindful about how you say something to somebody. When you're ready to respond, how you say something greatly affects how that person listens to you. You know what I'm saying? Because if you really want that person to hear what you have to say, you got to respond in a way that's digestible. You can't, this whole brutally honest bullshit that I've been hearing, and to me, that's just an excuse to be an asshole. You hurt because somebody in your life hurt you, and so now you want to hurt everybody else. You the fucking monster. You the Loch Ness monster in the goddamn ocean. No, you know, while all the other fishes are swimming around, you trying to eat everybody alive. You know, that's not a good way to live. You know what I'm saying? This whole brutally honest bullshit. I could be brutally honest, but I'm still being mindful of how I say some shit. You know, at least I try to be. You're not going to be perfect at it, but what you want to do is just be mindful. Especially if you know somebody has certain trigger points and you know that if you say something in a certain way, it would affect them. You just as guilty if you do. You know what I'm saying? So how you say something plays a critical role when you're responding after you've done the listening process. You need to be mindful how you say it. A good example, and then I'll close on this part. If I say, you getting on my fucking nerves, and then I say, You getting on my nerves. You getting on my fucking nerves, man. You see how one sounds more playful? I'm smiling. Again, that's body language part. But let's say you couldn't see if I'm smiling, right? You just on the phone with me. How I sound when I say, you getting on my nerves, man. You getting on my fucking nerves, man. Like, that sounds playful, right? Even though I'm cussing, it sounds playful. But if I said, you getting on my fucking nerves, that sounds like that. If that's all you heard on the phone, you didn't know me from a can of paint, you gonna think, oh, this motherfucker dead ass serious. You gonna, that's some like attention shit. Attention. You gonna kind of get a little shaking in your boots. Cause you don't know what's about to happen next. You don't know if an axe about to come through your damn speakers on your goddamn phone and hit you in the damn head. Cause you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that, like, that's what I mean when I say how you say something. So when you having a serious conversation with somebody on the phone, especially, and they can't see you, that's all the more reason to be mindful about how you say something. If you're having a serious conversation on FaceTime or video chat or in person, you should still be mindful of how you say something, but you can make some mistakes because they can see your body language too. People can see that as well. So, next is what you say. So I put in parentheses word choices because that's pretty much what I mean. How you say something and what words you use makes a huge difference in the success and or failure of your response after you have listened. I'm going to say that again. How you say something and what you say has a huge effect on the success or failure of your response after you have listened. So after you have did the whole Herbert process and you at the last step of responding, how you speak and what words you use affects that conversation going forward. So while you also got to be mindful of your tonality, you got to be mindful of what words you use. You can't be using words out of context. You can't be using words based on the type of dictionary you want, based on the type of meaning you want them to mean. Stick with the goddamn dictionary. Like so many people nowadays want to be like, oh, but this word TV means VCR and the VCR means Netflix. Like, stick with the fucking definition of these words. You cause more confusion when you want to walk around and say, well, this means this to me. Like, stick with the definition, damn it. Y'all cause a lot of confusion in y'all situations with people when y'all trying to have y'all own meanings to shit. You're not fucking special. You don't need to have a meaning to every goddamn word in the dictionary. There's people in a goddamn room sipping on some scissor, writing down what the hell they think should be the next word in the dictionary, and they come to a consensus like a group think, and they say, yeah, I think this is a good meaning for this word. And then they put it out there in the dictionary, and then we are looking at that shit. And so what I'm saying is that this is the overall consensus for this word, whether it's TV, VCR, fucking hand, like these things, you don't need to be adding your own fucking meanings. You're causing yourself more confusion. You're causing the person you talking to more confusion, and it just creates more hell because now we gotta not only worry about addressing the problems that we're trying to address right now and actively listen to each other and be able to respond appropriately. Now we gotta worry about the words being taken out of context because everybody got 50 million different meanings to it. It's just too much work. Make the shit easier for yourself and make it easier for the person that you're talking to by just sticking with the goddamn dictionary meaning. So what you say, again, is just as vital. This is another critical component to the DNA structure of a long-lasting relationship. You have to be mindful of what you're saying. So next, body language. I kind of touched on this just a few minutes ago, but yeah, this is just visual. So how again, I think that especially when it comes to serious arguments or conversations, that should be done more so in person unless you don't feel comfortable. But in person is better because you could see the person's body language. You are less likely to take certain things that are said personal, but at the same time, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel comfortable. You want to talk about it on the phone, cool. You want to talk about video chat, that's your business. But I think being in person is a lot more beneficial because you could feel their energy too. You could feel what place they're trying to come from with you. You could feel they're coming from a place of I don't give a fuck about you really, or they coming from a place of I really care about you, but I'm just saying stupid shit out my mouth. So whichever one it is, you can have a better discernment of what that is when you are in person. This is why you can get all this knowledge from somebody on, before you go on a first date with them, but nothing is like that first date with somebody. You may think you really like them after I had all this great conversation and stuff, but then the moment you meet them in person, you're like, so because there's a energetic connection that goes on right there. I mean, for lack of better words, I hate using energy, but that's what y'all be using for nowadays. So just to kind of keep y'all on the same page as me, yeah, there's an energy message. There's a message there, a vibe that you get that you can't get on the phone or on FaceTime. You don't get it until you meet them in person. So that's why I say, being in person and talking about stuff can be just as better than, being on the phone. All right, next, positive reinforcement before disagreeing or disagreement. So positive reinforcement is essentially I'm giving you positivity from what you said, and then I'm going to now respond to what you said, regardless if I'm in agreement or not, right? So a good example would be you tell me your opinion on you thinking that the earth is flat, right? And you're gonna, as like all arguments, you list out your points, you list out your reasons, just like in a paragraph. You're like, this is the topic sentence. I think the earth is flat, and here's my 3 points, right? And so after you finish those 3 points and you conclude, what happens next? Well, then I'm probably going to respond. And so usually what I try to do when I'm having debates with people or disagreements with somebody is I try to give positive reinforcement before I give my difference in opinion. So that's what I mean when I say before disagreement. I try to give a positive reinforcement before I give my difference in opinion, because if I know my opinion differentiates from this person's opinion, then I would like to give them positive reinforcement. Why do I want to do that? Okay, I'm gonna tell you, and this is optional, by the way. You don't have to give people positive reinforcement. I do it because it reduces the odds of this person inadvertently thinking that my difference in opinion means that I'm trying to say that that's all that it should be and you are wrong, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. But people sometimes get this feeling that that's what they think a person is trying to say or do just because the person disagrees with them. Not everybody's worrying about that shit. But because I don't want that person to get defensive and I'm just trying to share my thoughts and opinions on something, what I do is I say, and this is like, I may say something along the lines like, okay, I get what you're trying to say, but this is what I think. You know what I'm saying? Or I'll say, yeah, I understand that. That's to me is like a short, quick, like positive reinforcement. Now, some people would think like, oh, if you say that, they gonna think that you on their side or you agree with them. If they do, then they're dumb as shit. Because, I mean, I don't know, like, not anything. Those 2 examples I said, neither one of them said anything about I agree with you. They just said I understand, or I get what you're saying, or your point is valid. Like, that makes a lot of sense. But that don't mean that I agree with you. That's a different conversation. And that conversation is about to happen 2 seconds after that, where I'm now going to tell you that I don't agree with you. So when I have a difference in opinion, usually I try to give people a positive reinforcement because this increases the likelihood that they listen to what I have to say. Too many times I've experienced situations where when I wasn't doing stuff like this, people, again, like I told you, They take things in thinking that your difference in opinion that you're saying is them, you trying to say that, like, oh, that's what it all should be for the rest, like, and only you're right. And it's like, I'm not trying to worry about being right. I'm just sharing my difference in opinion. But some people, their feelings go to that degree. So to kill that shit or try to kill it or mitigate it, I just give them a positive reinforcement first, and then before I give them my disagreeing statement. That way they calm their happy ass down a little bit, and then I can speak on whatever the hell I was trying to say. This is really useful. I mean, for me, I felt like it's made certain debates avoid bullshit. Sometimes it don't. I mean, it's not gonna always fucking work. I ain't no goddamn voodoo magic dude. Like, some of this shit ain't gonna work. Sometimes you just run into some, undesirables. People who you just can't, you couldn't work with them even if you tried. Like, some people just shit, and that's just is what it is. They the shit that plopped in the toilet. That's just what is going to be. Not everybody you're going to be able to reason with. So no matter how much fucking risk mitigation practices risk mitigation techniques you put in, some people are just going to be shit, and you just have to accept that. So, but like I said, that's optional. Positive reinforcement before a disagreement. You're to kind of like point out if this applies in a relationship or not, or a dating situation. Like I just described, that can be applied. This can be applied to anything. In a relationship, or if you're with somebody, or you're talking to someone, like you're dating somebody that you could tell they're pretty sensitive. Like that they seem like someone who's more likely to jump if they feel like you trying to say that there's something that's 100% true and they're wrong or something. Like, if you got people like that in your life who they're so fixated on right and wrong, that's, first of all, they shouldn't be like that. But if they are like that, to kind of like keep their happy ass calm down a little bit, you could try to do positive reinforcement before you give your difference in statement. So that way they kind of calm down, because you kind of validated them in a sense. So they feel like they come to peace a little bit. I'm not saying it's always going to work, but it has been helpful in my opinion. I've seen it, and I've used it in action, and somebody be hyped up and I'll say, you have a good point. I do agree with you to some degree, or, hey, I understand what you're trying to say. I think that you have some valid points, but here's what I have to say. And I've noticed that sometimes people were able to hear me better than if I just jump straight to just telling them my disagreement and responding with my disagreement. I feel like people tend to be more riled up. So, just a suggestion, you ain't gotta fucking do it. The next thing is interject tactfully. So this is, I think I mentioned this a few, earlier in this video, but when it comes to the Hura process, right, and you're trying to understand something, you may need to interject tactfully. So let's say you have a man or a woman, and you're in a relationship with them, and and they're known for, having long-winded statements, right? Well, you may been the type of person where you had to interject sometimes. Well, this is kind of like what I mean. If you have clarifying questions that you need answers to, interjecting tactfully while they're speaking will kind of help you understand while you're still trying to listen. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by interject tactfully. Like, most times interjecting would not be appropriate. But again, in situations where you or both of y'all, the type of people, y'all run y'all fucking mouths real long when y'all speaking or expressing yourselves, it's okay. At least for me, it's okay if you cut me off to just ask a clarifying question, because I will want you to understand what I'm trying to say, right? And I think most people should be okay with that. I know I'm just saying what I think, but you should kind of be okay with that. If you have a habit of running your fucking mouth for a long period of time when you are upset and you're expressing yourself, you should be okay, a little bit more flexible when people need to interject you, because if you're going to talk for 15 minutes, like, then you need to be willing to allow interjections to happen, because they may have things to say or ask so they can keep up with you, right? So I don't have a problem with that, right? It's only when, like I said, when you're listening to respond, like I'm speaking and I didn't even get half of what I say and you're cutting me off. Like, no one likes that shit. So, but when you are listening and you just had to step in and say, hey, um, just a quick clarification. What did you mean by this? And then they give you clarification. I've done this before, even when people were in the hype of their emotions, and they calmly just gave me their clarification, and then they continued on. So most people would appreciate it, I would think, if you're just interjecting to ask clarifying questions. If you're interjecting to take over the conversation, then you're listening to respond, and you're going to piss that person off because they're going to think that you're undervaluing what they have to say and you don't value what they have to say at all. And that goes back to you failing to listen. You see how listening is more important than talking now? That's why I said that. Last thing is concluding a convo. I don't know if you can hear this damn squeaking with my chair, but hey, it is what it is. This is my chair. So concluding a convo. Now, this is going to be primarily focused on a relationship. You're not going to really need to really worry about this when you're worrying about talking it to a colleague or a friend or something. Y'all just let the conversation naturally flow however the fuck it does. But when you are having a serious conversation with your partner and stuff like that right there, concluding a convo is very helpful. Again, it's optional. I think you should do it because this kind of basically brings everything back together. So if you come up to your partner and you had an issue, y'all do the whole HERA process, right? Y'all listen to each other out. Y'all gave each other valid, accurate responses to the situation. And then now y'all come to a conclusion, right? And the conclusion could be like, okay, here's the compromise, or here's the agreement, right? Because an agreement to me is something different. That's not a compromise. That may be an agreement like, I'm not doing this again, or they're not doing something again, or they're doing something going forward, right? So whether it's an agreement or a compromise, you should, one of y'all, I tend to take the lead on this because, again, not everybody's the same. Not everybody thinks about this. But usually what I try to do is do a conclusion statement. So a conclusion paragraph, not a statement, is basically where I describe the synopsis of basically in a nutshell, what I had a problem with, what they had a problem with, and what we decided to do to address these problems. You see what I mean? And so the reason why I do that is so we kind of like remind each other in very short fashion what each other's issues were and what the solution is. So that way, when we look back on this, this is what we really can focus on remembering. We don't have to worry about trying to remember all the goddamn details that were said. We can just remember the conclusion statement, right? I mean, the conclusion paragraph. This also goes to something that I've heard and I learned a few years ago about people remember the first thing and the last thing, right? They remember those two things the most. I'm not saying people do remember things in between, right? But the biggest things they remember the most with the most detail is the first and last thing. And this, I think this was going in regards, I think I learned this in regards to first impressions. Like your first impression and your last impression of somebody, the last impression you make on someone affects them more than everything in between, right? I'm still a firm believer of that. So me doing a conclusion paragraph is basically like me following that methodology of where I think that the first and last things are the most crucial points. So I try to take the lead on that and say, okay, here's what you had an issue with. Here's what I had an issue with. Maybe like, and that's in like 2 or 1 sentence. And then the last sentence being just, and this is the solution that we have agreed upon. And this is more so to reiterate like, okay, this is what we agreed upon. And if they had any if they had anything else to say about that, that's the moment to say it. Because I've had moments where I said that, I gave a conclusion paragraph, and the person, stepped in and said, oh, hey, like, I didn't know we was agreeing on that. I thought we was agreeing on this. You see how y'all probably was off pages. So sometimes a conclusion paragraph can actually save y'all from potentially being on the wrong page at the end. Because sometimes you have a conclusion, y'all get to a compromise, and for whatever reason, at some point between the last thing that was said and the compromise, they was off pages with you. So they're thinking that this is that one thing is the compromise, where in reality the other thing was the compromise. So saying a conclusion statement or paragraph kind of like addresses making sure that both parties is still on the same page. This was your issue. This was my issue. And here's the compromise and or agreement upon in to address those issues. And that way, if they're like, oh, I didn't know that was the compromise or whatever, boom. You see, I've had that happen a lot. So again, that's just a suggestion when it comes to dating and relationships. I think that can be really helpful. I think you should fucking do that. You know, I think that is really helpful. So, concluding a convo, I think that's probably, I wouldn't say that's a bloodline, but I would say that if you want the best like level of communication with your partner as best as you can to make sure y'all maintain staying on the same page as much as possible, having a conclusion statement at the end, especially if y'all was talking for fucking 2 hours long or 3 hours long, that shit get exhaustive and no one's gonna remember all that shit. I don't give a fuck who you are. Fuck what you heard. Unless you recording these phone calls or chit chats or whatever, you're not gonna remember all that stuff. So it will be better to have a conclusion statement at the end to make sure y'all still on the same page. You know, y'all's just saving yourselves some trouble. So that's it. That is it. That was about 3, 6, 7, 8 points. But yeah, that's pretty much it for communication. Like I said, this is mostly primarily and usually focused on the dating relationship aspect. But for communication, this is just a good piece of life advice. Like, you can apply this to anything. It's not really something that has to be only applied to a relationship. I think that you should apply this to everybody that you interact with, because it will make you a better person in the long run. But in regards to relationships, don't be a fucking domineering ass person. Like, learn how to fucking listen. 70% of the time, 30% of the time you talk, right? And if you practice that, you'll have an easier rapport. You'll have a better rapport with the people in your life, especially the people that's very close to you, like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or your husband or wife. So that's all I got to say. I didn't want to joke around too fucking much, because I do take communication very seriously. I think this is probably one of the most valuable like characteristics I think anybody can have to me. So this is really fucking important. Everybody should take communication this fucking serious. I don't think, you know, like I said, if you was smoking a bong when I was speaking, you're wrong. You should have put that fucking bong down for these 42 minutes I was goddamn speaking and heard every goddamn bit. Shut the hell up, listen more, and respond like a respectable person, right? Don't be a goddamn dickhead. So, all right. I appreciate y'all listening. I'll talk to y'all later.